one down, pass it around. 67 bottles of milk on the wall. 67 bottles of milk on the wall. 67 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 66 bottles of milk on the wall. 66 bottles of milk on the wall. 66 bottles on the wall. Take one down, pass it around. 65 bottles of milk on the wall. 65 bottles of milk on the ground. 65 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 64 bottles of milk on the wall. 64 bottles of milk on the wall. 64 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 63 bottles of milk on the wall. 63 bottles of milk on the wall. 63 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 62 bottles of milk on the wall. 62 bottles of milk on the wall. 62 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 61 bottles of milk on the wall. 61 bottles of milk on the wall. 61 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 60 bottles of milk on the wall. 60 bottles of milk on the wall. 60 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 59 bottles of milk on the wall. 59 bottles of milk on the wall. 59 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 58 bottles of milk on the wall. 58 bottles of milk on the wall. 58 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 57 bottles of milk on the wall. 57 bottles of milk on the wall. 57 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 56 bottles of milk on the wall. 56 bottles of milk on the wall. 56 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 55 bottles of milk on the wall. 55 bottles of milk on the wall. 55 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 54 bottles of milk on the wall. 54 bottles of milk on the wall. 54 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 53 bottles of milk on the wall. 53 bottles of milk on the wall. 53 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 52 bottles of milk on the wall. 52 bottles of milk on the wall. 52 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 51 bottles of milk on the wall. 51 bottles of milk on the wall. 51 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 50 bottles of milk on the wall. 49 bottles, no, 50 bottles of milk on the wall. 50 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 49 bottles of milk on the wall. 49 bottles of milk on the wall. 49 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 48 bottles of milk on the wall. 48 bottles of milk on the wall. 48 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 47 bottles of milk on the wall. 47 bottles of milk on the wall. 47 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 46 bottles of milk on the wall. 46 bottles of milk on the wall. 46 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 45 bottles of milk on the wall. 45 bottles of milk on the wall. 45 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 43 bottles of milk on the wall. 43 bottles of milk on the wall. 43 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 42 bottles of milk on the wall. 42 bottles of milk on the wall. 42 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 41 bottles of milk on the wall. 41 bottles of milk on the wall. 41 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 40 bottles of milk on the wall, 40 bottles of milk on the wall, 40 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 40 bottles of milk on the wall. For 30 on the wall, 39 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 38 bottles of milk on the wall, 38 bottles of milk on the wall, 38 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 37 bottles of milk on the wall, 37 bottles of milk on the wall, 37 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 36 bottles of milk on the wall, 36 bottles of milk on the wall, 36 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 35 bottles of milk on the wall, 35 bottles of milk on the wall, 35 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 34 bottles of milk on the wall, 34 bottles of milk on the wall, 34 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 33 bottles of milk on the wall, 33 bottles of milk on the wall, 33 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 32 bottles of milk on the wall, 32 bottles of milk on the wall, 32 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 31 bottles of milk on the wall, 31 bottles of milk on the wall, 31 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 30 bottles of milk on the wall, 30 bottles of milk on the wall, 30 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 29 bottles of milk on the wall, 29 bottles of milk on the wall, 29 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 28 bottles of milk on the wall, 27 bottles of milk on the wall, 28 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 25 bottles, 27 bottles of milk and milk on the wall, 27 bottles of milk on the wall, 27 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 26 bottles of milk on the wall, 26 bottles of milk on the wall, 36 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 25 bottles of milk on the wall, 25 bottles of milk on the wall, 25 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 24 bottles of milk on the wall, 24 bottles of milk on the wall, 24 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 23 bottles of milk on the wall, 23 bottles of milk on the wall, 23 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 22 bottles of milk on the wall, 22 bottles of milk on the wall, 22 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 21 bottles of milk on the wall, 21 bottles of milk on the wall, 21 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 20 bottles of milk on the wall, 20 bottles of milk on the wall, 20 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 19 bottles of milk on the wall, 19 bottles of wall, 19 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 18 bottles of milk on the wall, 18 bottles of milk on the wall, 18 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 17 bottles of milk on the wall, 17 bottles of milk on the wall, 17 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 16 bottles of milk on the wall, 16 bottles of milk on the wall, 16 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 15 bottles of milk on the wall, 15 bottles of milk on the wall, 15 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 14 bottles of milk on the wall. 14 bottles of milk on the wall. 14 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 13 bottles of milk on the wall. 13 bottles of milk on the wall. 13 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 12 gallons of milk on the wall. 12 bottles of milk on the wall. 12 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 11 bottles of milk on the wall. 11 bottles of milk on the wall. 11 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. $10 of milk on the wall. 10 gallons of milk on the wall. 10 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 9 bottles of milk on the wall. 9 bottles of milk on the wall. 9 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 8 bottles of milk on the wall. 8 bottles of milk on the wall. 8 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 7 bottles of milk on the wall. 6 bottles of milk on the wall. 7 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 6 bottles of milk on the wall. 6 bottles of milk on the wall. 6 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 5 bottles of milk on the wall. 5 bottles of milk on the wall. 5 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 3 bottles of milk on the wall. 4 bottles of milk on the wall. 4 bottles of milk on the wall. 4 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 3 bottles of milk on the wall. 3 bottles of milk on the wall. 3 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 2 bottles of milk on the wall. 2 bottles of milk on the wall. 2 bottles of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 1 bottle of milk on the wall. 1 bottle of milk on the wall. 1 bottle of milk. Take one down, pass it around. 0 bottles of milk on the wall. Onmore said it was impossible. We just went from 100 to 0. Seven. For all the haters. I said like 140 times more than you because of how many times I restarted. Yeah. But it's okay though. As long as I know that we both did 100. That's how we end the year. That's how we end the year, bro. Go 100 bottles of milk on the wall, finishing it. That's how we end the year. Dang. I was stuck on something forever, bro. By the way, I'm only on level 73. Oh, I skipped it already. It's only... Oh, it's 5 levels. I just guessed it was 5 levels. I never even knew. Yes. I need to record that.